All right. So bring it in and let me talk to you for a second.
What you want?
You want to buy a house this year, right? You might even want to buy a new car too, right?
Possibly.
And on top of that, you're probably thinking about that new business and how you can get it off the ground too, right?
Yeah, you might be right.
You have big goals, and you're not going to be able to reach them if you can't get your credit to where you need it to be. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what you need to do to get started fixing your own credit, DIY style, for free. So I'm Ty, and let's talk some square biz. Now, before we get started, can we all touch and agree that having a good credit score will open up lots of financial opportunities? Mortgages and car loans are directly impacted by your credit. And with both of these markets at an all-time high, one of the only ways to save money is by getting a low interest rate. And you won't be able to do that without good credit. So hit the like button to touch and the subscribe button to agree that although cash is king, credit is queen. And they're married. And depending on your situation, it may not be a happy marriage. And with that being said, there are two things that you're going to need to get started on our credit fixing journey. The first thing is a government issued ID with the correct address on it. This could be your driver's license or permit or another state issued ID. You're also going to need some proof of residency at the address that's on your ID. This could be a utility bill, water or electric, a bank statement, your current lease or mortgage statement, or maybe even some tax documents you may have. Now, there are some people out there with the incorrect address on your ID. Maybe because you just moved or you're in the military or something like that. My recommendation is really just to go and get a new ID with your correct address. But I do realize some people aren't able to do that. So if you can't get a new ID, then make sure that whatever you're using for your proof of residency has the correct address attached to your name on it. But I will say, in the long run, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to dispute negative items on your report if you're providing the credit bureaus an ID with an address associated to that item. Also, be prepared to print multiple copies of your ID and your proof of residency, because depending on your credit, you may have to mail these in over and over again to the credit bureaus depending on how many items you're going to be disputing. And speaking of mail, it's important to know that the most effective way to dispute items on your credit report is through the mail. I don't suggest you call or go online to dispute anything, because online disputes often result in a lot of automatic verifications, and then trying to call up the trained professionals at the credit bureaus will only have you losing the battle if you don't know what you're talking about. So the best way is through USPS mail. Is it slower? Yes, but it's better. Trust me. Now here's my first question to you. Do you even know what's on your credit report? No, not the one that you pull off of Credit Karma or some other third-party site. Though some of those sites are good to monitor your credit, they do not give you the complete and total picture of your credit report that you get directly from TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax. And for these purposes, you need to know exactly what these companies have on you. So the only free way to get all three of your official credit reports is through annualcreditreport.com. By law, you are entitled to this. And under normal circumstances, you can request this every 12 months or every year. But because we're living in some crazy days right now, annualcreditreport.com is allowing you to receive a free copy of all three of your reports every single week. Now, the weekly reports probably won't last forever, and it's likely to go back once a year once the pandemic is over, if it's ever going to be over. But as of right now, January 2022, if you have not received your free credit reports this week, then the first step is for you to log on to annualcreditreport.com and go ahead and request your free copies for this week. And if you're watching this video and they've already stopped the weekly free reports, and it's been a while since you got your last free reports, then the next best thing that you can do is go to each credit bureau's website and download your reports directly from them. But of course, it's going to cost you a little bit. The takeaway here is that you need to get a copy of all three of your official reports from TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Now, this next step may take you some time to complete, but it's vital, so please don't skip it. And honestly, you really shouldn't try to dispute anything on your credit report without doing this first. So what you need to do is put a freeze on all your credit profiles, not just TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. But there are other lesser known information bureaus out there that retrieve and sell your information to different companies, including the major bureaus. And you must freeze them too. So those companies are LexisNexis SageStream, CoreLogic, Innovis, and Advanced Resolution Services, or ARS. If you didn't already know, these other information bureaus actually supply TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian with your information. That's right. So let's just say you want to dispute an item on your TransUnion report, right? During their investigation, TransUnion is going to try to reach out to these other information bureaus to try to verify your debt. And by you freezing them, you're cutting them off from this approach and forcing them to find another way to verify that debt. And if they can't get the information and they have no other way to verify it, then guess what? it's got to come off your report. And we don't want to give them any easy route to verify information and keep the negative items on your report. So in the description, I have the websites to each of the credit bureaus that you need to go and freeze your profiles with. That's TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, SageStream, and LexisNexis have merged. So all you need to do is go to the LexisNexis website to freeze both of these, CoreLogic and ARS. Now for some of these, like ARS, you may have to upload your ID and proof of residency. Or they may even ask you to mail it in so they can verify your identity. But that's fine because I already know you have these items ready. Also, all of these won't be instant freezes, and this is why I say it may take a little time, because some of these companies will have to contact you by mail to let you know that the freeze is there. The important part is that you don't skip this step and that you make sure that the freeze is in place before you start to try to dispute anything. And like I said, this can either be instant, it can take a few days, or maybe a few weeks, but make sure that freeze is in place. Alright, so in the meantime, while you're waiting on your freezes, you can start reviewing the reports you downloaded. Now, I'm a little old school when it comes to this. I like to have things printed out on paper so I can review it. So for this next step, I suggest you print the reports out and grab a highlighter because you're about to mark it up like an English 101 teacher. Now, if you don't have a handy dandy printer or you just want to stay as paperless as possible, that's perfectly fine to review your reports on your computer, your laptop, or your mobile device. Just make sure that you can see everything that's going on and you're able to compare all three. Now, when you start to look at your reports, you'll see it's broken down into sections. Each report is going to have your personal information, your accounts, whether they're open or closed, your public records like bankruptcies, judgments, and liens, and your inquiries like your hard and soft pulls. So one of the first things that we're going to focus on and we got to make sure is right is your personal information. In this section, you want to limit the amount of information the credit bureau has. So you want to make sure you have one name, one address, one phone number, and one employer. So starting with your name, it should be spelled correctly as shown on your ID. If there are any other versions of your name, whether it's misspelled or they only have half of your name there or it's just initials, then we want to make sure you highlight that because we're going to get those removed and they're coming off. And for your address, you want to make sure it's the same one that's reflected on your ID and proof of residency. If it's not that address, then go ahead and highlight them because those are coming off too. It doesn't matter if you lived there last month, last year, or last week. They're coming off. You should only have one address, and that's going to be the one that's on your ID and proof of residency. The same goes for your phone number. It should only be one phone number. So if there's any other number there or the number is not correct, go ahead and highlight it because that's coming off too. As well as your employer, you should only have one on there. So if there's any other jobs you may have worked or not have work, go ahead and highlight those because those are coming off. Now, if you're in between jobs, you just go ahead and list your last employer. And then when you get your new job, make sure you change this up. The employer information can be important because sometimes banks and lenders may look at your total credit profile and then try to verify your employment information as to whether or not you can pay back whatever you borrowed. Now, you're going to want to do this for all three of the reports, so make sure that the same information is reflected across all of them. And if there's anything in the personal information section that's outside of your ID or proof of residency, then go ahead and highlight it because like I said, that stuff will be coming off. And most of you will find some errors or extra information. And if you do, then that's going to be the first dispute letter that we mail off to the bureaus. Now, I have a template or a sample letter in my private SquareBiz Facebook group if you need it. All you have to do is click the link in the description, join the group, and look through the documents. But basically, the letter just states that you reviewed your current credit report and you found that your personal information wasn't accurate. You're going to enclose a copy of your ID and your proof of residency, and then you'll mail this off to each bureau that has the incorrect information. Here on the screen are the addresses that you will send to. Now listen, the first time you send this letter out, the credit bureaus may not remove everything that you asked for. But the key to this and every other dispute is to follow up, follow up, follow up. You may have to send this letter out a bunch of times. And for this section only, it's okay to get on the phone and verify that the corrections have been made. Now, the reason that is so important that you want this section to only report the one name, one address, phone number, and employer is because this is what they'll use when they're trying to verify your debts in their investigation. Having the different variations and the different addresses and the different phone numbers in your report only gives them more data points to say that the debt is yours, and that's not what you want. And to learn more about how this works and how to remove negative items from your report, then go ahead and click the next video. So I'm Ty, that was a little SquareBiz, and I'm out.